Hello and welcome to the A2P cast for our 2013 in review. First time around, we talked about the games we enjoyed that came out this year. This time, we're going to talk about the other things, and also the games that didn't really come out in this year, but were kind of lazy and cheap sometimes, and so we only got around to playing them now. We figured we'd tell you about them anyway. So without further ado, let's dive on into it with some of our favorite things that happened this year. Pacific Rim
Yes.
was glorious.
Yes.
I'm looking at these two beaming faces next to me just at the height of the word, so I'm just going to pass it along to Mike Reifenberry. Why do you think Pacific Rim was one of the most glorious movies of the year?
Because Guillermo del Toro is a genius at conveying his childlike glee through every facet of this movie. So it was basically a love letter to like Japanese mecha stuff, to monster movies, to kids like playing with their Power Rangers, like making up big fights that were totally implausible, but it works in this movie. It had some really bold casting choices. You have the typical white male protagonist, but the story really centers around an Asian female and a black male, which I think is really cool and interesting. And those were both.
And Idris Elba is the most badass, cool motherfucker.
He's also the most suave motherfucker alive and should be James Bond.
He should.
When Daniel Craig is done, he should be James fucking Bond. No question about it. But aside from that, their relationship together was great on screen. There were well-written characters. The fact that it didn't take place in New York or L.A., all of these places that we've seen destroyed a million times before, it took place mostly in Hong Kong, which is the perfect setting for something like this because it's a beautiful city, and all the neon lights and the reflective buildings and the verticality of all the wonderful architecture there is just, it's so perfect for something like this. And, I mean, the effects looked great, the music was great, everything about it was just a joy to watch.
Mm-hmm.
It was the most fun.
Yeah, and I think it was easily the best movie-going experience I had this year, just because I was so surprised by what I was seeing on screen. I couldn't believe how much I was loving this movie when I was watching it, and it just get better and better and better. And as far as the story, the thing that I love that makes it the best is they kept the story really simple. And I think this was a complaint for a lot of people. The characters were simple and the story was simple. I think this was a really ingenious choice by Guillermo del Toro to keep it extremely, like, just bare bones. Like, it's a big apocalyptic story. Like, monsters are coming out of this portal and destroying the world, and we have to stop them with giant robots. But the story is really simple and really easy to follow. And it gives the fantastical elements even more weight to them. Like the big robot battles are so climactic because we know the stakes perfectly. We have everything set up for us. So like a story like that works perfectly in this movie's favor.
And I think there's an added human element because I think the natural comparison, or at least the surface level comparison of Pacific Rim, would be Transformers. And that was my initial reaction upon seeing the first trailer for Pacific Rim was, oh my god, not another Transformers knockoff. I can't even. And so I initially wrote this film off because it was going to be garbage, it was going to be Transformers. But I think an important factor, aside from all of the other ways that it's just miles better than Transformers, is that when you're watching the robots fight the monsters, the robots have people inside. And these people are characters that we spend time with and that we, realize have relationships with one another.
Right.
And it's not just, it isn't just Optimus Prime with whatever the fuck character Optimus Prime has, which I'm going to say is none. He's just a robot guy.
He's Robot Man.
Right, he's just a robot guy who does stuff. Whereas the robots in this are, just larger representations of the people inside them. The robot gets destroyed. Well, no, you just watched two of your characters die. That's a little more impactful, I think.
Yeah, although I do want to say that this is not a deep movie, and it doesn't try to be a deep movie. It doesn't want to be a deep movie. In fact, it actively opposes being a deep movie. And as we touched on a little bit, I want to make sure that we make clear with why this movie is so good. You can't expect a deep movie from it because it has no interest in giving you that, and it's unfair to compare it against other things because it was never trying to give that to you. Mm-hmm. What it wants to give you is a really good time. And it gives you just enough story to make it worthwhile and string the action along. But the characters never get in the way, which is another problem I think that Transformers kind of has, is that it doesn't quite get that. Transformers wants to be really big and fun and look at all these cool explosions, but it's at the same time trying to be a serious movie.
Yeah.
And so you've got this, shall I say, cognitive dissonance within it that am I supposed to be really serious about this? Is this a big drama? But that was really cool. How should I be jumping with glee, or should I really care about the plight of the characters? Like, you can't decide whether this is cool or whether this is like you're supposed to cry. Whereas Pacific Rim just says, no, don't worry about that. Look, this is cool. Look, this is a character. This is a person. He's kind of one-sided, but that doesn't matter because you know everything you need to know about him, and he's going to get in this thing and go fight.
That's true. It's a film that doesn't take itself too seriously. And everything is perfectly balanced. I think that's all we should say about it.
Yes. Wonderfully made.
Can't linger too much. It was great.
It was so great. We'll get caught up. So moving on to our next part of the list, Game of Thrones. We have talked a bit about Game of Thrones. At length in the podcast. But seeing we've had the whole
this year,
third season.
It came up. It's weird. It was almost a year away that we saw season 3. Yeah. And now that we've had proper time to sit and ferment and think about it.
We fermented.
Season
4 is almost upon us, and it's nice. Season 3 was the first half of the third book. We had the Red Wedding, which threw the world into uproar.
Yes.
Which was glorious. One of my favorite. I was looking through my tweets and review. My favorite tweet, I think we might have mentioned on the podcast, of this year was, do the Red Wedding, replace it with diarrhea, profit. I just want to see that. Maybe I'm a child, but I would like to see that. It's hard to think of other things that happened in the season, though, because the Red Wedding dominates.
It does dominate.
Really, what was I imagine we did have a cliffhanger. What was the cliffhanger for season 3?
The cliffhanger.
Pizza, right?
Pizza.
Yeah. Pizza.
Yeah. So there's the Daenerys storyline is sort of, I wouldn't actually say it's so much of a cliffhanger. I wouldn't say that any of it is at a super big cliffhanger because it's just kind of like, right now we're holding our breath. We're not sure what is this world going to do next because, we haven't had the chance to see anyone's reactions, the political moves that are going to be taking place after this huge event, because it all just happened and a lot of people don't know. The people who do know are still so shocked that you can't process any of that. It's just like, oh wow,
that happened.
Oh my God, what are we gonna do now?
And that's what always is a bummer with the last episode of Game of Thrones. It always seems it's just characters not necessarily reacting to
tragedy.
They're just kind of like, oh, that happened, and then they all just stand around. Can you believe that happened?
Wow, a thing
that happened.
They did a thing.
So yeah, we're gonna have to wait until season 4 to get the real what happens as a result of the Red Wedding.
And some big stuff happens.
Yeah, and some big stuff. I think big stuff will always happen.
Big stuff will always happen.
When Mr. Martin is involved, big stuff will continue to happen.
Big stuff will happen most likely in the second
and
to last
episode. Wearing the sailor's cap.
And the penultimate episode.
And he'll be napping instead of writing book 6.
And we can't wait for season 4. So we also had one of the greatest TV shows that has ever been made, and perhaps will ever be made, Breaking Bad, come to its conclusion. And the thing that I want to say about Breaking Bad, because we have definitely talked about Breaking Bad in length, but seeing it big picture-wise, my favorite thing about Breaking Bad and watching how it ended was seeing, and Shubsky and I talked about this, comparing it with The Last of Us, in the high-tension, high-drama, but watching how Breaking Bad really brought itself around. And that was my favorite thing about the show as a whole, is that it's almost, it's a marvel of a good story. It's just a great story with great characters to watch, but what's maybe most impressive about it are the technical aspects of its storytelling. is how tight it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it works well with emotion and tension, but it's like it crafts these things with an X-Acto knife and sculpting. It's like,
Would you say with a
box cutter?
With a box cutter?
Perhaps I would. And seeing that final episode come together, and so many people were expecting that, I mean, nothing good could ever happen again. It's going to just be this big high point where no one's happy. And in fact, we were given the opposite. We were given a very, very traditional ending. Because really, looking back, that we couldn't see at the time, is that this is not a crazy story. This is a very precise story. Yeah. And so like a precise, traditional, like a Mozartian sonata, everything comes back exactly as it should, and every piece falls into place, and everything is perfectly... I'm doing a lot of hand motions here. I'm sorry I talk with my hands. Everything is perfectly in place for the ending, so that the universe is back in equilibrium after it had been thrown so far out of whack.
That's true.
As opposed to another story, which could have easily just threw it out of whack and say, well, I'm out.
Oh yeah, right, exactly. And I think it's a marvel that it was able to bring it back around to such a small ending. Really, when you think, and
completely believably. I never thought, well, is this all? But it felt so right, and really, the whole thing was just
because again,
him alone.
Because again, none of what makes Breaking Bad good is about the setting or the actions that are taking place. It's always been about the characters, and so you're always concerned with, first and foremost, the emotions of the characters and how they're dealing with their settings and environments and predicaments. And so when you see Jesse at the end and you see Walter at the end, and they're they're dealing with the skinhead gang, that's the most important thing there, and you feel that, and it feels like a satisfying conclusion.
Yeah, I'd say the best thing that this season did for me is it made me want to go back all the way to the beginning and start it all over again. Because the way that it just concludes so perfectly, it closes that circle. There's nothing, there's no like bad feelings of like, oh, I guess it's over. Like I didn't feel like, I felt bittersweet that it was ending, but I felt, wow, that's.
But you get the closure, and the closure, as we have said, the closure makes you want to watch it again because you'll feel okay again in the end. If you go through something that's really extreme and it leaves you hanging at the very ending, it's hard to want to go back through because the tension in the beginning, it can never be resolved. So
you're not going to get a good enough.
But now you still have an end goal, even the second time through. You know where you're going, and you know you will feel good again at the end, and so you can still go through.
Still satisfying.
So that's Breaking Bad. Hopefully we see good things come out of the coming up spin-offs, but we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But moving
Hopefully
on to...
it won't be as bad as Low Winter Sun. Let's move on to Girls.
Moving on to Girls.
It's an interesting show to talk about on...
I don't know if we've talked about
we haven't.
Girls yet, but Girls is a really, really fabulous show on HBO.
I haven't seen it.
Fabulous was the appropriate word.
Fabulous is the appropriate word. And Mike Shipsky has not seen it,
so I'm going to...
It's third season.
Oh, no.
Yes, its third season is coming up in January, along with the third season of Sherlock.
And the fifth season of Archer.
And the fifth season of Archer. We got a lot of seasons coming up. But Girls, we can't talk about much because, we haven't really set up any pieces for it. There's a lot to talk about. Great show that you should look at. It's a really great example of just kind of what it's like to be young and urban in 2013. I think.
Yeah.
Even though it deals in fantastical elements sometimes. It's not always a strictly realist show, but as opposed to where Breaking Bad is so perfectly exacting, Girls and Doctor Who, which we'll mention in just a little bit, deals in much broader strokes. Are there plot holes? Yeah, but it's not the point that there aren't plot holes. The point is the emotions that we're dealing with.
Yeah, the point is not so much to worry about the tiny details of these people's relationships and all of the little drama. And I think there are comparisons made to Sex and the City, and yes-ish, but I think when you get down to it, this show is at its core more about making you feel what it's like to be young and, like you said, young urban millennial who doesn't really know what to do, and it's just out of college.
The glory of the show is it really, even when the characters are doing things you could never do, you feel like there's a mirror in front of you. Like I love when they have like phone calls in the middle of the night, the dialogue, the way it's structured, the way the characters pace around the room as they're talking. it's so everything that any of us has ever been in a relationship with another person has ever actually experienced, and you just go, oh my god, that's like watching myself, even though it technically isn't. It feels as if it is, and that's what makes the show good. So if you haven't watched Girls, catch up on HBO Go and start
also
season 3.
Everything Lena Dunham does
Or anything
is
Lena Dunham.
fantastic. She's truly brilliant, creative.
She
person.
is glorious. Now, Doctor Who, we've talked a lot about the 50th anniversary. That was big. Wanted to point out that we can't forget this is a big year for Doctor Who because, I mean, we saw Clara in the opening of season 7 and in the Christmas special, albeit in different versions of herself.
This was the year.
But this was the year we actually got her. And we wanted to remark that it really feels like we've had her for so long, and we've all become so attached to her as a fandom. As maybe it's just because she is the current companion, but she really is becoming a very, very, very favorite companion.
Yeah.
Because she's so and it's also because her and Matt Smith work so well with each other, and they have such an amazing dynamic. And that all happened in 2013. And it feels like it's been here forever. But no, this is all brand new stuff. We had Clara, we had some duds of an episode in between, but we had a really strong opening to the second half of season 7, a really strong ending to season 7. 50th anniversary was glorious, and by the time this goes up, not for the recording, but the Christmas special will have happened, and Matt Smith will have regenerated into Peter Capaldi. And there's a lot of really interesting things that are going to happen with Doctor Who, because I just said the thing that made it so good this year is that Jenna Coleman and Matt Smith work so well together on screen, and they have such a great dynamic of friends with a little bit of shipping going on in between, and you will they, won't they, I love them so much together. Oh, by the way, one of them's going to be ripped away and replaced with another actor. What is their on-screen chemistry going to be like? We don't know. We don't know, but we're excited to find out. We're excited to see how all this regeneration plays out. Again, don't want to talk about that too much because by this time, it is in the past and we've all cried our tears and had our moment, but I trust that it will be glorious.
Yeah, 2013, a bit of an... I would still say a bit of an uneven year for Doctor Who. Just because we didn't have a lot of it, really.
It was really segmented, and I hope that in the future we get onto a little bit more of a regular schedule, because it's true that season 7... because they deliberately wanted to avoid the big stories, because they knew they were breaking it up, they were changing things halfway through. It doesn't have that cohesiveness of 6.
Yeah.
And not every episode in season 7 is very good.
No.
It's, in fact, some of them are just...
Got a couple of
Season 7 has some, 2 of the best episodes that have happened since the show came back in 2005, and 3 of the worst episodes that have happened since the show came back in 2005. But we take them all as we go on.
You take your lumps with Doctor Who, but...
overall, it was
safe to say.
Like I said, the plot isn't always airtight.
That's a saying.
They make the science up as they go along, but the show that deals in broad strokes and emotions, and overall, we love it and we cry and we have a great time.
All right, let's get into some games.
Games that did not come out in 2013.
Right, exactly. Borderlands 2. I don't think any of us played that when it really came out.
No, but we jumped on the bandwagon together just this year.
Yeah,
and we haven't played it in a while.
The Microsoft sale.
It was the Microsoft sale. It was like, what was it, like $7 or something?
Yeah, it was like $10. It was really cheap.
$10. And I said, why not give it a try? And it turned out to be one of the better co-op experiences
really,
that I've had this year.
I think we've said before, it reminds us a lot of what we think maybe Destiny will end up being like, which I wasn't really excited for Destiny, and then we started playing Borderlands, and I might be into this co-op RPG shooter idea. It could be really, really fun, and Borderlands does have that, I think we should talk about the thing that makes Borderlands interesting is its distinctive character that it has to it, not only just in its art style, but also the characters live in its own world. It's a quirky game. It's a very
funny game.
It's a very funny game.
It is incredibly humorous. Tiny Tina
does not take itself too seriously.
Tiny Tina is the best creation in the game by far.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a ton more to say about that. It was good. It was really solid. We liked it.
Solid shooters, solid mechanics.
Feels good. All the different the weapons and the modding.
The amount of guns is just astounding.
It's really cool. It felt like a lot of fun. Uncharted.
Yes, this is a little story in and of itself. I bought the PS3 just to play Last of Us, and then I wound up saying, hey, why don't I just go back and play all the Uncharted games? Because they're made by Naughty Dog, and they should be good. And yeah, really, really good games. Probably a lot of people already know this, but you get a sense of where the team is going in regards to Last of Us, because obviously a lot of people that worked on Uncharted also worked on Last of Us. But yeah, like really fun games. They're so different from Last of Us, but they're so good in their own right. It's basically like an Indiana Jones movie set to a video game, which I love because I love the Indiana Jones movies. It's basically like a big blockbuster movie. Only you get to play the main character as Nathan Drake, and yeah, really solid third-person shooter. Really solid. It's kind of like an Assassin's Creed game, like a platformer, like you're jumping from things to things. But also some of the best looking games. I think Uncharted 2 is still one of the best looking games I've ever seen, ever played. But all in all, very, very good series. I'm really glad that I gave it a try.
Right, and in the same vein, we played Heavy Rain 2. The year it came out, we played Heavy Rain when it came out, and we're astounded that, the game that really said, I don't care about you having fun. This is an interactive story.
I don't think that's necessarily true.
Well, I mean, I've used fun in quotations.
Fun
it's an enjoyable experience in terms of enjoying a story, but I mean, it's not. There aren't really gameplay mechanics.
Not as such.
And I will say that was the big question mark I had, because I usually don't like QuickTime events. I don't like cutscenes, interactive cutscenes. I think that's cheap. But that's basically what Heavy Rain was. The whole game was that, and I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I think we've talked about Heavy Rain some, but I think Heavy Rain is still one of my top games ever, just because it is so much more of what I would consider an interactive narrative, like a more true hybrid between games and film. And it kind of, David Cage of Quantic Dream, is kind of like the guy who does this. That's his thing to find that balance. And I think they do it really effectively. And I think the end result was great. So I'm very happy you got a chance to finally get around to playing it.
Oh, definitely.
Important game to know.
A game that you got around to playing was Dragon Age Origins.
Yeah.
Even later to the game here.
Yeah. Really love BioWare. Love KOTOR. Love Mass Effect. Dragon Age Origins always sort of plagued me. I tried it once a long time ago.
Well, just look at it. It looks like the plague, first of all.
It looks like the plague.
It looks bad. It looks really bad.
Yeah.
There's no getting
really bad.
There's no getting around it.
And even though the gameplay was so similar to KOTOR, I still found myself just kind of not being engaged and not really loving it. I think because I so much more enjoyed.
Would you say the story? Did you just not like the story?
I mean, I never really got into it. I just couldn't. That's not to say that I've played hours and hours and hours of it. I certainly, I haven't past the 10 or 20 hour mark, but and I know I could if I really pushed myself, but I just don't have the desire to, because I'm not immediately hooked as I was in KOTOR. Or
right, and I think that's true. Dragon Age in general is not a game that. It's a game that it's a lot. It's not just you don't passively play Dragon Age. Dragon Age is an RPG for people who like RPGs.
It's a very big game.
You spend more time reading than playing.
Yeah, but see,
to really get the most out of Dragon Age.
When you say it like that, it kind of makes it seem like people who don't like it don't like those things, and I really do. I mean, that's even more true of KOTOR, and I love KOTOR for all of its intense RPG stuff. But I still just I don't get Dragon Age. I don't know.
Well, what I'm saying I think is still true. It's just you have to buy the world.
Yeah, you do. You have to get.
You have to buy the world, and you have to.
Which is for me the number one reason why I love it.
Yeah, and if you don't, because it's all. I mean, it's fantasy, high fantasy world building, like Tolkien is. Sure. If you don't get into what the world is, and if you just don't like what the world is, there's no way to like the game, because the game really isn't much else beside
world and RPG.
And so, like I say, reading. I mean, there's a lot of reading, but I mean, there's a lot of reading just catching up to where you need to be. You need to know what every faction is. You need to know the political atmosphere of the entire place. You need to know the histories, and you need to know the creation myths. And only at that point is the game enjoyable. And if you don't care enough about the world to get into that point, then the game really is kind of wasted.
Just quickly say, getting back to the graphical part, like one of the hindrances I would say is, if you really want to get into the world, you have to accept the graphics for what they are, which is a really tough pill for some people to swallow. But it makes me even more excited for Dragon Age Inquisition, because you're going to be seeing a fully realized world with a Frostbite engine.
It's much prettier, although I still think it looks kind of sloppy, and I think when it comes out next to everything else, Dragon Age is still not going to look very good. I think they're just... which BioWare does it. Whatever BioWare studio, because it's not the regular one that gives us Mass Effect. It's like its own specialized version of BioWare that does Dragon Age. And they're good at some stuff, but they're just kind of sloppy in the technical department. As much as I enjoy Dragon Age, it's a sloppy game, and I don't think it'll ever really stand up to other games. I think it will forever be. If you like Dragon Age and you want to get into the world and you want to devote yourself to reading this obscure version of a fantasy world, it will always be there, except for 2. It will always be there for you. If not, I don't think anything's going to convince you, because it looks really pretty now. I would bet money, when it comes out with comparing it to all the other games around it, it just has a cheapness to it.
Well,
like,
and
look at all these really great textures. Look at this really high frame rate. Look at these cool effects that this computer made for us. But does it come together as a cohesive kind of experience?
I think that's the danger of everyone kind of like, oh, it's made with Frostbite 3. Oh, it's made with Unreal 4 and like all of this stuff. There's a danger to doing that, because that doesn't mean anything. That just means that you're using the technology. It still has to be, the art direction has to come together into a cohesive whole to make something that looks and feels good with, incorporating the technology into it. It can't, they're not separate things. They have to come together or it won't work.
Right.
No matter how good your engine is.
So, very quickly, moving on to our list, we're past our time limits here. Mike Shipsky's just started playing the Hitman series for the very first time this year.
Hitman
Long series, glorious
Absolution.
franchise. Hitman
Yes.
Absolution. Blood Money is the cult favorite, but Absolution has some really glorious moments in it. Want to just share one favorite moment that you've had so far in Hitman?
I was in a strip club, and I had to take out the owner of the strip club, and I stalked him around. He would walk around like the bar, then he'd walk to like this dance area, then he'd walk to the bathroom. So many different options. But then I noticed he was always walking towards this one dance floor, and I could go behind, and you could drop a disco ball on his head and kill him. And
I think that sums up the franchise pretty well in one sentence.
You keep telling me about this birthday cake
There
scene.
is
I have yet to get to the birthday cake scene.
There is a chance in Hitman Absolution to strangle a stripper and hide in the birthday cake in her stead and wait for the people to come in and yell, "Surprise!" and you burst out covered in confetti and gun everyone down in the room. Again, a good way to sum up the franchise.
It's perfectly
In a setting.
encapsulates the franchise.
It's a wonderful game. It's not a very serious game.
Having known nothing about the franchise, it perfectly encapsulates the franchise.
It's pretty good. You also played Fez. Now the other Mike and I know nothing about Fez, and you were having a lot of fun.
I know
playing
a
Fez
very
in
little bit
360.
about it, but go ahead and.
Well, it came to my attention because of the documentary Indie Game the Movie. Indie Game the Movie follows a couple of development teams making their little independent games, and one of them was Fez. Phil Fish is the name of the guy who made Fez. Took a long time to make, but well worth it because it's such an ingenious incorporation of 2D gameplay and 3D gameplay. So basically, what it works is it's a side scroller, but the world you can rotate the world at any point. So if you're in one dimension and like there's a platform over there and it's too far away, if you just rotate the world just a little bit, the platform will immediately be right there. It's so interesting. I've never seen anything like
Blowing
that in
my
a game.
mind.
But yeah, fun little indie game. I would highly recommend it that you guys pick it up and give it a try.
That sounds fair.
Okay, so I think 2 final points here, and these we'll sort of pin these back up with the 2013, like the other media stuff that we were.
Don't know
talking
why it's
about.
all the way down here, but we just decided to get to it.
Yeah. Okay. So Star Trek Into Darkness and Django Unchained. Django did come out technically in 2012.
But it was Christmas.
I think it was Christmas.
So there's like 5 days left. We saw it in January. We're
Yeah.
counting it as a 2013.
It's a 2013 movie for all
Nintendo
that we care.
purposes,
Yes. So one of these is really good, and one of these is really not good. Let's take a guess as to which
Let's
they
take
are.
a gander and say, maybe Into Darkness is a piece of genius.
You're right.
Genius.
Django Unchained was a piece of shit.
Piece of shit.
No one liked
Schlock
it.
garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
No, really. Django Unchained.
we
It's
need
just
to
kinda-
watch Django Unchained again because it's been a while.
do.
But Django Unchained is a wonderful movie.
It's brilliant.
That is it's all it as with so many of his movies is really kind of genre bending. It forms to no rules that you might have for it. It does whatever it pleases, but it's also never riveting, never emotionally connecting. Never not emotionally connecting, I mean to say. It's always good on drawing you into the characters that are so interesting and well written, and then full of glorious excess. It almost is like taking the great stuff of Pacific Rim and marrying it with
With
actual writing and
writing
characters.
and
It's
themes and more
something that we
complex
might
stuff.
almost then we could use this. This is the only movie you're allowed to compare Pacific Rim to. If you're going to say anything bad about Pacific Rim, you can only say it isn't Django Unchained, which is the only kind of parallel I can have there. Star Trek Into Darkness, really mostly awful. There's a handful of things I like in it,
The beginning was okay,
but it really
And
goes
then-
nice
oh my
ideas that
I
go
don't
nowhere.
think the beginning was okay. I think the beginning was awful. I think the beginning shouldn't have existed. I can't remember exactly because it's been a while for this one too. But it's like it starts off with the intro is like in a volcano.
Yeah.
And
Oh, that beginning. Yeah, never mind. I forgot that was the beginning.
yeah, right. It's shitty. So it's like the Prime Directive stuff. Can't violate the Prime Directive. If they save Spock, they violate the Prime Directive. And so it becomes a question of, does Kirk do what Spock would do and stick to the rules, but leave his buddy to die, or does he do the Kirk thing and play to his emotions, breaking the Prime Directive to save Spock? He, of course, does the Kirk
He
thing,
does the
saves
Kirk
Spock, and then we rehash all of this old shitty territory about Spock isn't capable of feelings, which is fucking false. He's a Vulcan, not a machine.
We have determined in the last the entire there's no new character arc in the movie. Is the main problem with the movie is that all the characters
rinse and repeat
from the first movie. We watched them grow, which is what made the first movie so interesting to watch, even though it was such a strange take on Star Trek.
Yeah, it's like simple dumb action movie, but at least the characters have like simple arcs and they have their places that they filled. But this one just
we went to the same places. Like, I know this story. You can't convince me. I know what Spock's going to do in the end because you just showed me that he was capable of that. We've talked before how much we hate Damon Lindelof, and Mike Greifenberg and I pegged the entire failure of this movie on him because there isn't a single writing credit that Damon Lindelof is associated with that doesn't suffer from the exact same problem of a kind of interesting concept that devolves into nonsense. From Lost, Prometheus,
and Star Trek.
Star Trek Into Darkness. There might be one more that I'm forgetting, another TV show they did. But he basically he starts off with this one idea that you have when you're talking to your friends, like, wouldn't that be an interesting idea for a movie?
And it's like, yeah, that's cool. And then he takes it to this conclusion that makes no sense. It gets so convoluted, and there are so many plot holes and so many things that the characters don't make sense, the actions don't make sense,
and everything has to be big. Like nothing is allowed to just be a character story. Everything has to grow. I spilled my coffee this morning, and
then the world ended,
and then that's only the mid movie plot point. Then the world ended, and then at the end I had to play chess with God. That's the kind of level that Damon Lindelof takes things, and I think he works with J.J. Abrams a lot, but I think he ruins everything that he has input on. So
yeah, I mean, J.J. Abrams is competent.
Yeah.
We're aware of that.
Competent
He's
director.
a competent director. He's not great. He's competent. He can do it. But when you put a stupid other creative person in there that's just kind of a moron and doesn't know what he's doing clearly, you just end up with a big pile of garbage.
Benedict Cumberbatch is always good, though.
Benedict Cumberbatch his performance was
rises above every movie he's in. Doesn't matter how bad it is. He rises above untarnished. He's just glorious.
The character was great.
I will say that I didn't really care for his performance. I thought it was boring. I don't know. I just thought everybody in this movie was
everyone was boring, with him the least of the boring.
I'm saying that if it had been anyone but Benedict Cumberbatch, it would have been so terrible.
We would have utterly forgotten.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
It doesn't matter what you give him, he will give you something you didn't even know was capable. He was mildly interesting.
Yes.
Which is astonishing, given what he was given.
The shit character spoilers, that was Khan. Why did it have to be Khan? There was no fucking reason it had to be Khan. Yeah. And then we had to see
Leonard Nimoy.
We had to see Leonard Nimoy for 30 seconds.
All right.
And then we had
just a big pile of shit.
So Into Darkness was schlock.
Again.
Yeah. We're imploding because we hate certain things in life.
Actually, it's good that we have these two back to back, because with these two movies, we run the gamut of
all of our emotions,
good and bad.
Django Unchained is crazy, and it works so well.
Yeah.
Star Trek Into Darkness
is crazy,
and it's so bad.
Yep. So yeah,
so that was it. Now that's 2013 in review. Next time we have a podcast, we're going to start looking at 2014, and we have some interesting ideas on where we think Apple's supposed to go, based on the hard evidence of some rumors we read on the internet.
Yeah, that's Can't question it.
We can't
No,
question that at all, but it
so
raises some
strong.
interesting questions, and we're going to be looking forward to another glorious year of the A2P cast. So I am Josh Hartman with Mike Reichenberry and Mike Shipsky.
Have a happy new year. Yay!
Yay.